So this evening we chanted the Anatta-lakkhana Sutta, and it's called one of the cardinal suttas, one of the discourses very central to the Buddha's teaching and the Buddha's way of looking at things. And say historically, it was a very early sutta given to the first 5 ascetics after the Buddha gave the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, and Anya Kondanya was the realized stream entry. And then after that, the Buddha continued to teach and instruct, and that story's in the Vinaya. Buddha continued to teach and instruct, and sometimes they would go on. A couple of them would go on alms round and provide food for the rest of them, and one by one, they all realized stream entry. And then the Buddha gave the Discourse on Not Self, and that was the catalyst for all of them then realizing arahantship. So it was a very important discourse, and having setting the foundation of the teaching in place, and using say the tools for investigation, the khandhas as a looking at 5 khandhas: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, consciousness, as a basis of investigation and contemplation. And the Buddha took a very ordinary word in the vernacular of the day. Khandhas it means groups, heaps, lumps, and it's not doesn't have any particular religious significance at the prior to the Buddha's time, but then he used that as a way of these are the different. It's a handy use of analyzing the constituents of being into groups. It's just this. It's not. There's not a solid line between any of them, and it's a convenient way of analysis. It's a way of looking at our experience through function, as there's a physical form, feeling as pleasant, painful, neutral, sanya as perception, and that which gives meaning, and puts a label on things very quickly. Function of the mind, in some places the Buddha just says body and mind, and that's kind of the simplest way. But then it's helpful to break it up a bit according to function, look at it and investigate it. And sanya is because say Pali, Sanskrit are say Indo-European languages. It has the same root as sign. So there's like we perceive things through. There's a certain sign that's given, color, shape, form. We identify it by that, and then some perception we perceive by clump things into groups, and it's obviously useful and necessary. If we had to figure everything out every minute, it's just be impossible. Mental formations are that's the biggest category, really, in the sense of positive, negative thoughts, emotions, functions of the mind, anger, ill will, greed. It's a mental formation. Loving kindness, generosity, sympathetic joy. That's a mental formation. Mindfulness is a mental formation. Its characteristic is volition, intention, cetana, and then consciousness, the consciousness of sense consciousness, which takes our experience of the senses and weaves it into an experience, feeds into the rest of the khandhas, and the Buddha is quite explicit that these are, how do you say, they're not. These khandhas are not absolutely separate. It's a convenient way. They, as the Buddha said, they are conjoined. They are not disjoined. And sometimes people will think if you can analyze it down to absolutely granular things and make it into a discrete thing. Well, it's still conjoined. They're going to. But and the Buddha uses this this experience of the khandhas because this is what we identify with as self. This is me. This is mine. And that, as in the sutta, etang mame, eso hamasami, eso me atati. This is mine. I am this. This is myself. And that's in the sense, and self, and it's like self, soul, essence. And the Buddha, in the very first part of the sutta, that if it were really a self, it wouldn't fall apart on you. It wouldn't be so untrustworthy. But it is, and so it's important to say this is not self. Recognize it for what it is, and then also the aspect of, because we identify in different ways of, and the Buddha says there's different types of identification, where that, in terms of the five khandhas, form, we identify form as self. The form is myself. This is myself, or the form belongs to self. Or form is in self. or self is in form. All these different, we jump through all sorts of hoops to try to maintain this sense of me, and this identity, and that, and it just simplifies. It's such a relief to say, oh, this is not self. Gosh, I've been running around trying to prop this up and making all these assumptions, and it was never self to begin with. There was never a solid I and me and mine within. It doesn't negate the experience. The experience is it has it has implications. It has ramifications. What we think, what we conceive, what we invest in, what we identify with. That has results, and but it's seen more from maybe more like this is a process that we are engaged in. It does have results. How do we? I remember one time, Ajahn talking with Tsoknyi Rinpoche. Tsoknyi Rinpoche is a very great Tibetan teacher. He is and a Dzogchen teacher, and his father was one of the great Dzogchen masters. And he was saying that in old Tibet, the Dzogchen wouldn't be taught to a student until they had at least 10, 20 years of experience and practice, and had a very solid foundation in because Dzogchen it relies on not self, emptiness, but it wouldn't be taught until there was the teacher was very confident that the student had a firm grasp of say, karma and was understood that everything has a result. Everything has there are causes and conditions that are playing out, and that if one doesn't really understand that or take responsibility for that, you can't just sort of play the get out of jail free card and say that it's all empty. It's not. This doesn't work that way. And so that sense of really understanding what we identify with and how that affects us. And of course, that's why, say, in the sutta, the Buddha's refrain is in terms of investigation is always around the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, not self. That sense of seeing things in that light, anicca, dukkha, anatta, and that sense of seeing the impermanence, uncertainty, change of everything we identify, the unsatisfactory nature of that identification, and the assumption of self that comes from that, and that sense of this is not self. So to be seeing that in a clear light, and that in so a discourse that the Buddha talks about it gives some similes for the experience of the five khandhas and the image of foam. The sutta is actually called the foam sutta, Fena sutta, foam, where the Buddha is standing on the edge of a river, and there's some, the water's churning a bit. There's some foam on top, and the Buddha sees that foam, and that's what form is like. Physical form, the body, rupa khandha, is like that foam. But when one looks at that foam and sees it, observes it, examines it carefully, it doesn't really have any substance. It doesn't have any solidity to it. And similarly, that sense of seeing, observing, examining closely is how we pay attention to our experience. And then the Buddha gives, and then continues on with the theme of giving a simile for the, say, Vedana, feeling. Vedana is like he gives in the hot season when the first rains start to come and comes in big drops and it hits water and there's bubbles form. And those bubbles, of course, those bubbles appear and pop. They don't really have don't really have any substance either. And when one sees it, observes it, examines it closely, it doesn't have that solidity. It doesn't have a stability. And it's pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling, they just keep popping like bubbles. The sanya khandha, the perception, aggregate of perception, is the compared to a mirage, like being in somewhere classic one is in the desert and you're seeing water, or you're driving on a road and you see out in the distant and it's hot and there's a shimmering kind of heat and it looks like water. Or you're out someplace and it's sort of looking like trees or something, but it's a mirage. It's an image that is picked up and assumed. It doesn't have any substantial reality. And say the sanya khandha is like that. We pick it up as this is mine. I am this. This is myself. But then there's the way that perception of we look at something and we say, okay, it's male and female, old and young, big or small, whatever. I mean, all of those are kind of labels and perception signs that we assume into reality. Certain shapes we assume as something. You look out on the hillside and you see a shape and the mind more immediately tree. I mean, it's the way the mind needs to have these labels just to make things easier. But of course, we invest in them quite heavily and are deluded by them. So again, this sense of seeing, observing, examining closely, so that we not just taking things on the surface, the sense of the mental formation, sankhara kanda, is seen as like a banana tree, where somebody goes, villager goes out in the forest and he looking for a tree and to do some building, and he goes and he comes across a banana tree, and they can go quite big in the forest. You cut it down, and of course you start peeling it. It's like an onion, is what it is. And you keep peeling each layer, and there's nothing inside, and that's mental formations, the thoughts, emotions, conjectures, the things that we come up with, thought, views and opinions, and that's built on thought, emotion, and where's the essence? What's the core? And it's just not there, and certainly not worthy of making that leap of assumption and say, this is mine, I am this is myself, and say, whether it's positive or negative, I mean, it's that, say, an extrapolation that is unnecessary, and it's important to be. This is impermanent. This is unsatisfactory. This is not self. That puts in a very different context, and seeing it so that it's, one can learn from it, try to understand it, try to use it skillfully, but not be deluded by it. Consciousness is seen as that the Buddha compares it to a conjurer's trick, a magic trick. It looks, something's happening that's really special, but as soon as if you look underneath it, because that's what say consciousness takes, that weaves those sense experiences and formulates, and the assumption that arises from that is of kind of I and me and mine, but it's conjured into existence. It's not, doesn't have a real substantial existence. So this is again, that's seeing, observing, examining closely, reflecting on experience, analyzing it from a perspective that calls it into question, and particularly that this is over and over again. It becomes more clear. This is impermanent. This is unsatisfactory. This is not self. And it's helpful to, it's essential in terms of practice to keep prodding the mind and prodding ourselves to investigate, because it's not the normal assumption, the ordinary assumption. As we investigate from looking at that, the body is this kind of foam, and our physical feeling is something quite insubstantial. It's that it's really helpful, because we when it's healthy and young, and you assume it's always going to be here. It's always going to be reliable in some way. And and as you get older, it's sort of like you have to be out of your mind to believe that. It's really the bits are falling off all the time, and it really it's prey to all sorts of illness and so it's just that's its nature. It's like Ajahn Cha talking about the body, just saying like this. He said in Thai, it's sort of like this kind of brand, this model. This brand, this model. There's no warranty on it. It's not. It's just not there. It's not stable. It's not. It's very uncertain. And within that, and it's, because oftentimes it's just in normal worldly ways. I mean, these are objects of desire or basis of the gratification of desire, and it's not such a stable base to be working from. And feeling and that image of the bubbles popping, and just really seeing that uncertain, unsubstantial, changing nature, that pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, just these feelings popping and popping and popping, and we chase after them. And we feel good. We experience a pleasant feeling. We feel good. Experience an unpleasant feeling, and then we're the world's going to end. We're terrible people. I mean, it's just we make this assumption. This is self. We invest in the sense of self. Perception is just really helpful to see that. Oh, this mirage. Is everything as it appears or not? And the more one questions it, then of course, when seeing was not just trusting in the illusion of things. Seeing the banana tree, a plantain, or the onion, the leek, where it's just layer after layer of with no substantial core. Because we think there is a substantial, like there's. I mean, it's just is an innate or it's an innate assumption that is somehow, especially with mental formations, this is what we kind of exercise a willpower or a will to affect thought and emotion and constructs of ideas and emotion and we're assuming that because of that, then there's some kind of essence to it. There's actually a solid being there, or sort of like because choices are made, that there's actually a me who is a chooser, And that's an assumption. That is an extrapolation. And we when you work on false assumptions, you end up with you end up in the weeds. I mean, this is where you end up in difficulty. And same with consciousness, seeing that conjures trick. And it's not that there's nothing experienced, but it's saying, are we willing to see it, observe it, examine it closely, so that there's a deeper understanding of the experience, and not assuming a self into existence, or an I am into existence. The Analio Bhikkhu, he's in one of his is a very, I think, I haven't come across it anywhere else, a unique and I think quite succinct, clear way of where these five khandhas are we posit an I am into that, so that form or body is where I am. Physical form. This is where I am. And say feeling Vedana. This is how I am. I'm experiencing happiness or dukkha, or sukha, dukkha, or neutral. This is how I am, and the feeling is, and then the perception is what I am. I'm male, I'm female, I'm young, I'm old, I'm whatever nationality or race or what, all of that. This is what I am, but it's a perception, and it has a functional use, but it also is not an ultimate truth, and it doesn't form the basis of a solid, permanent self. It's just an assumption, a perception. So that what I am. And the mental formation, sort of why I am. It's why I'm acting, why. And it was the volition of say, greed or renunciation, of anger, loving kindness. This is why one does. But it's a why I am, and it's all, and the say consciousness is sort of the whereby I am. In this, it ties it all together. It gives sort of makes sense of it. Whereby this is where I come from. This is where I'm going. This is, and so it's but it's all for the purpose of propping up I am, and that sense of again, this is mine, I am this is myself. And it's exactly what the Buddha is saying. You want to see that, observe that, examine it closely, because that's not the story that you want to be buying into. That's the story you want to penetrate, because that's that sense of they form the basis of our the experience of subjective personality, but they're not solid. It's like foam, bubbles, mirage, banana plant, conjurer's trick. This is This is the the kind of insubstantial, and that's where that contemplating through that lens of anicca dukkha anatta. This is impermanent. This is unsatisfactory. This is not self. Sort of over and over again, we have to keep investigating that. And I mean, it's important to recognize that when we do that, it's not just, say, kind of like a dry analysis of experience into something that kind of leaves us. Everything's, kind of insubstantial, changing. You're kind of left in a kind of a world of instability and perpetual misery. I mean, it's not how it works, because it's also along with that, there's that cultivation of refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Refuge in those the wholesome qualities of parami, this wholesome activity that one engages in, the cultivation of generosity and kindness, and the application of the Brahma Viharas and embodying that. So those are and that's what makes it even more accessible and sustainable, is because we can grow into those, and those become very expansive, because it's not being claimed by, this is mine, I am this is myself. There's a contraction all the time when we revert to that position. And say that giving of oneself to the training, giving of oneself to the refuges, experiencing. I mean, another aspect is that that contemplation, investigation, practice of, say, anicca opens a doorway into what is called, they say, animita vimokkha. They say the liberation by signlessness. So that one is there's the heart is able to open up to this kind of signlessness, because the nature of the mind is to, we glom onto the perception of things, the how things manifest, and when we see it in its uncertain nature, changing nature, insubstantial nature, then one can open out to something much more spacious. That practice with contemplation of dukkha is a doorway into what the Buddha calls apanahita vimokkha, the liberation by desirelessness, where one is not, as long as one keeps assuming substance, essence, gratification, a chasing after the that sense of being able to own or hang on to either mental phenomena, or the world. It's always going to be frustrating. But that seeing, then there's a letting go or relinquishing, and then a willingness to just not have desire, form that constant craving and seeking, and hope for gratification, hope for making things the way one wants or assumes. So that apanahita, vimokkha, liberation, emancipation by desirelessness. The penetration of anatta is sunyata vimokkha. So sunyata as emptiness, and so that it's and of course, say in the Theravada and the early scriptures, early teachings of the Buddha, sunyata is really it's the manifestation of not self. It's that seeing the emptiness of self. It's not really, because there's, as Buddhism grew and spread, and there was a kind of emptiness or sunyata becomes almost a kind of a metaphysical entity, and that in the early teachings, that's the Buddhists point to a much more practical and realizable. Okay, this is empty of self, and it's that sense of releasing of the identification. And this is mine. I am this. This is myself. That is the seeing that clearly. Then that empty, one experiences an emptiness, a letting go, a release from that, and that's this tremendous peace. That's and these are similarly, these are conjoined. They're not disjoined. Say anicca, dukkha, anatta are not kind of separate and discrete practices or insights. They're inevitably bound up with each other, and learning how to investigate it from that point. So that the this teaching of not self. The Buddha doesn't use it as a philosophical position. It's just, this is a practical tool for freeing the heart from suffering, freeing the heart from that which limits and keeps tormenting us, because we make that assumption. That to pick it up in the way of seeing, observing, examining closely. That's our doorway in and doorway out of suffering. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.